Hello, my name is Jorb. I love gear, and I just got back from Knobcon. 2024, Knobcon number 12. It's a synth convention that takes place every year in vibrant Schaumburg, Illinois, just south of Chicago. Schaumburg sort of feels like if a Wells Fargo meeting room grew to be a whole city, and it has some nice restaurants. But it's a good place for conventions, and Knobcon rules. There's a show floor with companies and individuals showing off stuff they've made, synthesizers, drum machines, Eurorack stuff, you name it, whatever. Performances late into the night, and of course, some of the finest people this community has to offer. I don't like doing booth interviews, but I do like seeing and talking about new gear, so I wait until I'm sitting peacefully back home to talk about what impressed me. Originally, I was going to do this from the kitchenette of the cheap-ass hotel that I got, Extended Stay America, but I checked out early because it was gross. 5-hour journey after that, and here we are. I'm back at home. You guys don't care about that, though. You care about gear. If you're subscribed, thanks for coming back. If you're a patron, that means the world to me. If you don't support me in either of those ways, you can support me in a bunch of ways in the description. Okay, let's start. The first thing I saw that really impressed me was the Michigan Synthworks MSW 830. I know I've brought up the 810 before, probably in another Knobcon video, and that takes a lot of inspiration from the Roland 810, which is a real thing, a vintage thing that did exist, a 101 or 202 style mono synth. And its bigger brother, the 830, starts as a 3-oscillator version of that. Add some extra envelopes, extra LFO, I think maybe 2, digital control, there's oscillator cross modulation, there's tons of extra stuff. It makes this a sort of OG Roland flavor 3-oscillator mono, which is cool. Who wouldn't love that? It's almost reminding me of, and I don't know if this is valuable to anybody who watched this, but the Fano did this line of guitars called the Alt De Facto series. It was this like what if for old school instruments. It's stuff that is clearly vintage inspired, but it's combining influences from different manufacturers or different whatever, you get the point. It combines influences from all sorts of stuff that never really had a shared history. And that's what this is kind of like. The 830s, 3 oscillators, a bunch of cross modulation, which isn't sort of that early era of Roland, you know what I mean? Anyway, that tangent was probably not helpful, but it's a cool idea. It's well executed, and I think it sounds really, really good. A lot of the demo, probably too much, when I was playing. My favorite thing, it has a phaser mode for the filter, and you can modulate it with an envelope like anything, you know? It sounded crazy cool. I've seen that in a couple Eurorack filters, but not in a standalone synth, and I thought that was awesome. Projected price between 7 and 8, which I just saw in some forums. It wasn't like really listed anywhere. Rock and roll. It isn't finished yet, like a lot of the stuff on this list, by the way. Some of it is available, some of it isn't. I'll link below to whatever it is, so just click and find out from there. Yeah, MSW 830, awesome. Next up, I don't talk about Eurorack that much, but when I'm impressed, I'm impressed. So this is an oscillator from Infrasonic Audio called the Warp Core. It's a stereo phase distortion oscillator. If you have heard of phase distortion synthesis before, I would bet you've heard of the Casio CZ line. It's like this cult classic, not nearly as popular as FM approach to digital synthesis from the mid-'80s, I think. As a technique, it hasn't been explored that much. And to like really oversimplify it, you change the rate at which you read back values from a sine wave. I found some pretty good diagrams in actually the manual for the Warp Core, where it has the rate in red and the sine wave, that is being read out. And you can see as you sort of change that rate at which you read it back, you sort of like bend and mush this sine wave. And the Warp Core lets you do 2 of those sort of like phase transformations, those variable depth phase distortion algorithms in series. You do one after the other, and then the second output is a 90-degree phase shift from the start. So it's related to the first, but a slightly different phase. And after you warp them, the relationship gets a little more complicated. So it's stereo derived from the same thing, which is really, really cool. I like interesting methods of stereo. And you can modulate the phase like separate from that warping at audio rate. There's this control called windowing, which sort of like is a simple per period envelope, I guess, amp envelope. External modulation, external CV of all those things. Lots to explore for a type of synthesis that hasn't really been explored like this. And it sounds really, really cool. Sometimes it sounds like two oscillators, or an oscillator through filter, or like FM, or like wavefolding. It really impressed me, and it was a more hands-on way to manipulate this than other stuff I'd seen. And I know the ALM Sizzle exists, but I don't know anything about that.
The Infrasonic Warp Core
is available now if he hasn't sold out. Something totally different, how about a polysynth? The GS Music Brie 6. I know GS Music, you probably know GS Music from the E7, which was a 7-voice poly that came out of nowhere and really, really impressed me. The Brie 6 is a 6-voice poly that takes a lot of the same ideas, but streamlines it. A lot of the same design approach, the same smart implementation, still some pretty big ideas, but it has, look at how many fewer knobs are on it. The oscillator is closer to a Juno thing. It can be a saw and a square and a sub. Those can be simultaneous. Very Juno. I think it's the same filter as the E7, which was like a ladder filter, built-in ARP, built-in sequencer, built-in chorus, built-in delay, stereo voice panning, a lot of the same UI stuff that I love about the E7 as well. So like lights for when voices are on, value readouts when you change controls, sort of visuals for parameters like the filter and resonance, and sort of keyboard tracking. That like really impressed me. I'm playing the keyboard version, and there's also a desktop version. Both seemed like well-sized, well-proportioned. I think it's a solid design. I think it's a good form factor. I think the sounds are great, just like the E7. What's not to like? I'm not sure about the price. I think they said November is what they're thinking of for release. But yeah, this is definitely one to pay attention to. GS Music is cool. Not a lot of polysynths. Certainly not analog polysynths like this from small companies. I think it's super exciting. GS Music is great. You guys should pay attention to this one. Okay. Here's one for the freaks. This is as a term of endearment, by the way, this is the Demon Box from, I think, Eternal Research was the name. It is a like desktop format electromagnetic microphone array. Are they microphones? Are they pickups? Whatever they are. You have 3 outputs for different groups of those. Pickups, I guess. Pickups makes the most sense to me. But also control voltage out based on what each of those is picking up. Each of those groups is picking up. And it is MIDI. It's like way more outputs than you would expect, you know what I mean, from something that's just picking up electromagnetic noise. So their booth was like the unit, which is like a flat desktop thing, running through a bunch of pedals, and then a drill, an electric shaver, tuning forks. People were putting their phones in front of it. I put a point-and-shoot camera on top of it and like ran the motor. It was cool to wave shit around and hear it through those Chase Bliss pedals, Mood Mark II, and they were using it also to control this like video synthesizer thing, or video effects, I guess probably is more accurate, through like a big Max MSP patch. It was a cool setup. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like my thing. This like super experimental noise stuff isn't really my bag. You know what I mean? I don't know what music I would make with it. But when I see like, I've seen a couple other EMF things, little microphones or whatever, this makes more sense to me as like something to have in your studio for experimental noise. I think the Soma Labs one is really the one I'm talking about. But this is a form factor that to me makes more sense. And the outputs that it has, you know, seem to either, one, lean into the sort of experimental thing, but being able to control stuff with it makes a lot more sense. Stuff like that, I guess. It seems more interesting than that Soma microphone to me. but maybe that's because I don't make this sort of music. Regardless, or mess with this sort of sound. Regardless, I can tell that it's the exact sort of thing for somebody. Someone needs to hear about this, and they'll use it for something insane, and that's cool. Right? Right. Okay. Now back to something that's more my speed, for sure. And last, but certainly not least, this is the Vanilla Synthesizer from Musonics. The latest from my friend Suit and Tie Guy, the Vanilla Synthesizer is a 5U semi-modular, yes, semi-modular, with circuits that are sort of like hot-rodded versions of Oberheim designs. A lot of them are. The filter, of course, being like the most important thing to mention, or the most like character-driving thing to know about. But I think the oscillators aren't quite the same, and it also has like an MS-20 LF. Everything being modular sort of brings it away from the SEM or the two-voice. You know, it feels different from the get-go, how you approach it. But knowing the inspiration starts with Oberheim circuits, that's a good place to sort of start your understanding of what it might sound like or what it might be able to do. And like I said, it's semi-modular. A lot of things are normaled, and there's a MIDI module in the back, so you can plug right in and it'll make noise. So it's a cool format. It sounds huge. Being built out of modules, you can swap stuff around if you prefer. If you want to try a different oscillator or add a second filter or whatever. And there's not that much stuff coming out in Moog format, so it's cool. I don't know what's not to like. I hope I get to have one, Suit. I hope I get to try one. Anyway, you get it. If you know about the stuff I just told you, you'll be excited about this, right? But I end on this for two reasons. I end on the Vanilla Synthesizer for two reasons. First, Musonics is pretty much just Suit and Tie Guy. But he has a lot of help from people that I'm sure he would describe as friends first. I'll link to a newsletter he put out a while ago about the Vanilla Synthesizer, and he mentions a bunch of other people who are involved, all people who on some level love the same stuff, met Suit and Tie Guy, became friends, and helped them. And there's tons of instrument companies like that, tons of people who are making instruments on this like super micro scale, who are just passionate enough to do it, and when they need help, hopefully they have a friend that can help them out, or understands the part that they don't understand, or has good tips, or has done it before, whatever. I love when passionate people do cool shit, and I love that I get to, even in a small way, be a part of that. Even just buying their stuff sometimes, you know? And I think a lot of those companies happen, and that passion really gets distilled by going to a place like Knobcon. Maybe the person you meet who helps you with the part you don't know or whatever, you met them at a convention like this. You met them in a place like this. And I love that, but you get it. I love when passionate people do cool shit. I love when passionate people get together, and I'm happy every year I get to go to Knobcon and talk to people like that and yap about gear. So one of the things I would say I'm most proud of in my life is enabling creativity for other people. I think everybody showing instruments at Knobcon is participating in that. I think everybody who puts Knobcon on, everybody who makes it happen, is participating in that too. So I feel great every time I'm there. I'm very tired when I leave, always. But I love being able to go, and that's really it. So thanks, Suit and Tie Guy, for putting it on, and really everybody who makes Knobcon happen. I know it's a lot of work. I'm glad it exists. My name's Jorb. I love gear. Knobcon forever. See you soon.